lot of farmers knew kind of how much tons of fertilizer they'd purchased or spread each year, but actually in terms of kgs of nitrogen per hectare, units per acre, just shy three-quarters of them didn't know in them terms how much nitrogen they were spreading. So with the 10% cut, they'll have to look and figure out if they're going to be still compliant. They may previously been compliant with that tonnage they were buying, but they'll have to look into that now.
Hello, I'm Cathal Summers.
And I'm Deirdre Glenn.
Your Teagasc Sustainability Advisors, and you're welcome to the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast number 54, bringing you the latest information, science and opinion to improve farm sustainability.
We would love to hear from you and get your opinions on what's discussed in the show. In order to contact us, you can email the Environment Edge podcast at teagasc.ie. Please feel free to ask questions or even make suggestions on topics you might like to hear discussed on the show.
With new measures introduced to the Nitrates Action Programme this year, now in its fifth programme, do farmers feel the actions will benefit their farm and water quality? Teagasc Walsh Programme Masters student Diarmuid Mulkerrins, working with the dairy farmers involved in the Agricultural Catchments Programme, chats to us about farmers' opinions on how effective they feel the regulation is.
Hi Diarmuid, you're really welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about the project that you're working on currently?
Yeah, hi Deirdre, hi Cathal, thanks for having me on. So my project is focused on the fifth Nitrates Action Programme. The rules came in, the new SI came in there in March 2022. So the focus of my study is around the changes that came in the Nitrates Action Programme. So we're in the fifth Nitrates Action Programme, as I alluded to there a moment ago. So the focus of my study is on how these changes, the new measures have come in. So previously there was measures and rules around maybe soil, water, for example, and my study just focused on the new rules that have come in and how farmers are going to adapt to them.
Farmers are delighted with that. Yeah, or delighted with the list of new rules coming in, I'd say.
I think everybody was confused, aren't they, with the rules, everything on top of each other. It's all dates and it's all numbers and advisors out there trying to get the message out to farmers.
Yeah, there's an awful lot for the farmers to take on board. There's a lot of new things, even for advisors working in the Teagasc Advisory Office in Clonakilty there for the year. There was a lot of changes for advisors alone. So for farmers, they had an awful lot of things coming at them, as you alluded to there, Deirdre, dates and new figures for excretion rates for cows, known as the banding, for example. So they had an awful lot to try to get used to there, really.
So, Diarmuid, I suppose you're looking at this and you have these new rules coming in. And you have a study. How did you go about your study, or who did you talk to, or what was the process, or what kind of information did you get?
Yes, my study, Cathal, was broken into two different stages because there were so many different changes after coming in the Nitrates Action Programme. It was just too many to go to with the farmers in one go, we felt. So I broke it up. The first stage was focused around key informants. They were industry stakeholders, really. And what the aim from that stage of the research was to try break down the measures. So I went through the SI and categorized them into 11 different categories. And so the key informants and the primary aim of that, our objective, was to try narrow that down to the top three. Which three measures would benefit water quality the most coming from dairy farmers?
That group that you spoke to first, so you didn't, at this stage, you weren't talking to farmers, you were talking to a group, you interviewed the stakeholders. Were they advisors and were they farm organizations, that kind of people you're talking to, and co-ops and things like that, is it?
Yeah, so they arranged, there was a range between private and public advisory services. Also included Department of Agriculture, Department of House and Local Government and Heritage, who sign in the Nitrates Action Programme. Law Pro were included in the EPA, for example, as well as some co-ops, as you came to there, and the Agricultural Catchments Programme, of course, as well.
So out of this then, that specialist group, they selected three of the top different actions from the regulations to improve water quality. And this highbrow group decided then that these three interventions or mitigation actions, these are the ones that you were going to discuss with the farmers. How did they come up with this conclusion?
So how we went about it was, I provided the key informants of the industry stakeholders with the list, and we were this is all done face to face. So I had them done out in little scorecards, and the industry stakeholders ranked them. They went through them one at a time. They read the new regulations, and to make sure just everybody was on the same wavelength, I suppose. But and then they ranked them manually on scorecards, putting them above or below the previous one that they'd read about. So that's how it kind of came about. And the top three that came out of it were the changes to soil, water storage and management. Livestock excretion rates came in as number 2, also known as the milk bans. And the third measure that came in was the chemical fertilizer reductions. I suppose maybe just if I put in one bullet on each on how they were picked, kind of maybe why they were chosen over other ones, was for the soiled water.
Just before you go there, Diarmuid, will you tell us maybe some of the other ones that were on the list as well, rather than the top 3? I think you had slurry storage and management and analysis of soils and low emission spread and things like that, was it? I think, reduced storage about wintering and all green cover. So they had a selection of 10 to choose from.
Yeah, they had that kind of, I suppose, menu of 11 different options. And as you mentioned there, Cathal, there was the changes to slurry storage and management, which under that heading was the changes that previously you could spread slurry up to the 15th of October in 2022 was brought back to the 8th of October, and from now on it's going to be the 1st of October is the close date for spreading slurry. So that was actually came in at number 4 on the list. There was changes to the low emission slurry spreading is more widespread now. Previously the requirement was for all irrigation farmers to use it, and that's coming in on a phased basis for farmers stocked at lower stocking rates in future. So
out of that 11, then the specialist group or the stakeholders selected the top 3 that they thought would be most beneficial then to water quality, was it?
Yeah.
It's very interesting that they ranked soiled water as the first one, wasn't it? I mean, there's total and utter confusion about soiled water around the country, isn't there? It's one of the biggest kind of anomalies.
Yeah, and it was kind of an interesting one. I suppose it might have been really, obviously the soiled water, there's the nutrients within soiled water, of course, but a lot less than there would be in slurry. But the reason kind of came above the slurry probably was it was that indirect benefit of the closed period where now no tanker, I suppose, can go out. It was kind of removing that grey area where maybe previously farmers could say they were spreading soiled water, but it was actually slurry in the month of December, and that's kind of really why that came as the number 1. It removed that grey area there, and now nothing as such can be spread during the month of December.
Yeah. That's actually quite good for water quality as well, from our perspective.
It is, yeah. And tell us a bit about those top three categories then. I think I stopped you there a minute ago, so just go into a little bit of detail. I know you spoke about the soil water, so that's the 30-day storage that people on dairy farms have to look out for.
Yeah, so that soil water is going to be introduced on a phased basis. Last year it was 10 days. The 21st to the 31st of December was a closed period. This year in 2023 now it's going to be from the 10th of December. And going forward then from the 2024 and onwards, it'll be the full month of December will be a closed period, and you'll have to have storage in place for that period of time also. In terms of the livestock excretion rates or the milk bans, not so long ago, every cow is a nitrogen excretion figure. So not so long ago, that was 85 kilos of nitrogen per cow. Then it changed to 89 kilos. And since January now, it's changed to, there's going to be 3 bans. Cows are going to be broken into 3 different categories depending on their milk supplied to the co-op. So it's based on the kilos of milk supplied. So below 4,500 kilos of milk is going to be known as band 1, and your nitrogen excretion figure for that dairy cow is going to reduce actually from 89 to 80 to represent them cows. For animals between 4,500 kilos of milk and 6,500 kilos of milk, which is going to be the majority of herds in the country, they'll fall into that band 2, and it'll go to be a slight increase in your nitrogen excretion figure there from 89 to 92. And where the biggest jump, I suppose, there is for the band 3 farmers who are supplying over 6,500 kilos of milk to the co-op, and they're going to go from 89 kgs of nitrogen per cow to 106. So there's quite a significant jump there. And the last measure, the third, the chemical fertilizer reductions, that's focused on nitrogen. Essentially, there's been kind of a 10% cut to nitrogen allowances for farmers across the country at different stocking rates. But also there's been an introduction of a newer category there for a farmer stocked below 130 kilos organic nitrogen per hectare, their new allowance will be 114 kilos chemical N, but for everybody else it was kind of a 10% cut, I suppose, to their nitrogen.
Can you tell me a little bit about now the farmers that were surveyed and how were they selected?
Yeah, so the farmers were farmers from the Agricultural Catchments Programme. So there's 6 catchments across the country within the programme, and the farmers that I've done my study with are dairy farmers that are farming within these 6 catchments. The farmers, I handed to them there as well that they were really good, in fairness, they're really good with their time. They were done as phone surveys in January 2023, so farmers were very generous with their time there, so I have to thank them for that. But the Nitrates Action Programme itself is implemented, we must have the Agricultural Catchments Programme or some monitoring programme to monitor the nitrates directives. So I picked those farmers because they're within the programme, and they're not a representative group of the country, but there are the 6 catchments ranging from up in Monaghan to Cork to Wexford to Mayo, so kind of different soil types and different systems. So they kind of, it was nice to kind of get different views, I suppose. But the farmers themselves, if we went through a few quick stats on them, they were 53 years of age on average. They were all farming full time. 2/3 of them were spring calving, 1/3 split calving. The average cow numbers was 122 cows on each herd. The average farm size 72 hectares. Just shy of 2/3 of them were in derogation, and the average whole farm stocking rate for the 42 farms that participated was 202 kilos of nitrogen per hectare.
And when you were out, I presume when you were talking to the farmers in interviews and you were introducing the 3 top regulations that the specialist group thought would be the highest impact, did you assess kind of how the farmers are getting on with those 3 regulations, I suppose, when you talked to them at the time back in January?
Yeah, so I just set of questions and to see where they're kind of standing at the moment, I suppose. And if we go through them there in order, the soil water storage and management changes, 26 of the farmers, or 62%, I suppose, had sufficient storage on farm at the moment. Of them at 26, 11 of them actually stored all their soil water in with their slurry. So I suppose if we maybe leave them out for a moment, and just focus on the people that designated soil water storage, just a little under half of them actually had enough soil water storage on place on the farm at the moment, with the majority of the farmers who didn't have sufficient storage, that they have somewhere between 10 to 19 days is what they indicated that they have on the farm at the moment. So
That's a bit of a worry, isn't it, Dermot, with the new regs coming in with the
For the
extended
winter,
dates?
yeah.
Yeah.
well, definitely with in 2023 now, it's 21 days storage requirements. So
Yeah.
there's 75% of the farmers who haven't enough storage in place at the moment that aren't going to be compliant this year unless they take some action.
And even physically trying to find space to extend your tank or put a new tank in is going to be a problem. And you've alluded to something here. There's 11 farmers are actually storing their soil water with slurry. The potential for other farmers, rather than putting in new soil waters, to throw it in on the slurry, but that puts pressure on their slurry then, so it could add additional issues down the line.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the actions. The farmers, when I asked them what actions, that they said they'd store any additional soil water requirements with their slurry at the moment. But as you said, Cathal, the slurry storage is going to be
Has to
put
go
a bit of
somewhere.
pressure on
It'll
that
be
then
under
there as well.
pressure.
And there's not as much flexibility. And when you can spread, then if you're putting the soil water in, you'll run out of space earlier in the spring. If you had a buffer currently, you mightn't in future. So
How were they on the livestock excretion rates?
yeah, with the milk banding, where the farmers sit, I suppose, in it at the moment, looking at the 3-year rolling average, if on that side of things. Now this year there was you could pick at last year's figures, or just for this year going forward, you could pick this year's current milk that's going to be sold to the co-op in 2023. But if we looked at just a 3-year rolling average for that, we had available about just shy of 60% of the farmers are going to fall into band 2. 34% of them are in the upper band in band 3, and the smaller cohort, about 7%, were going to be in the band 1. But that's from the data we had when I actually asked the farmers which band they're going to be in. Figures weren't too much different, but there was each of them three categories, like, they reduced, but there was 17% of farmers that actually didn't really know which band they're going to be farming in this year. And this was back in January, so
And
that was
to
a
be
bit.
fair to them, I'd say at that stage, there's been a big campaign in February and March from Teagasc and a lot of others to, I suppose, let our farmers know about the banding. So I'd say if you went back in the morning now, hopefully that 17% to be down a good bit.
Yeah, you'd be hoping it'd be probably nearly 0% now, because as near to zero as possible, but because farmers had to indicate to the department which band they were going to select there back in March, so you'd be hoping that figure would be very small at the moment. But in terms of the fertilizer, then, where they were sitting, a lot of farmers knew kind of how much tons of fertilizer they'd purchased or spread each year, but actually in terms of kgs of nitrogen per hectare, units per acre, just shy 3/4 of them didn't know in them terms how much nitrogen they were spreading. So with the 10% cut, they'll have to look and figure out if they're going to be still compliant. They may previously been compliant with that tonnage they were buying, but they'll have to look into that now.
With 64% of them in derogation, I suppose that leads me to believe there's a bit of communication from the likes of ourselves and private planners to be done on working on, when they come into the office on derogation, to work, show them their nutrient management plan, show them how much nitrogen they've spread and break it down for them, be it if they want to know it in tons or bags to the hectare or whatever it may be, just to communicate that message when they come into the office and support them.
Yeah, I suppose whichever metric they're going to use. But interestingly, when I did break down the figures and looked at those that were aware of their nitrogen usage, just over 4/5 of the farmers were the farmers in derogation. They knew their nitrogen.
They know their figures, don't they?
Yeah.
The staff, the derogation staff here, are very, very good at relaying the information to them. So you also asked the farmers if the measures would have a positive effect on water quality. Fair play to you, Diarmuid. We're working on water quality, so we are delighted with that. So what did they say?
Yeah, so when I actually asked them, I presented that in a Likert scale type question to them. So they had five different options. They could have said, I presented two different statements, we'll call them, and they could have said, I strongly disagree, I disagree, I'm neutral, I agree, or I strongly agree with the statement. So, for example, and the statement was the same each time, just the measure, just the soil water, the milk bands, or the 10% cut to fertilizer was just swapped in. So the statement was, changes to soil water storage and management will have a positive effect on water quality nationally, in this example. So what the farmers said back to me there was, on a national basis, that they nearly 65% of them agreed or strongly agreed to that statement, that they thought these changes will benefit water quality. Then when I asked them the same question on their own farm, maybe not so much.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose there was a lot more disagreeing to that statement, but that would come back to when we look back to their previous answer, saying they had sufficient storage in place, and some farmers, of course, they said they stored it with slurry, so they were never spreading during December. So that makes sense that they wouldn't agree with the statement as much on their own farms, because the change isn't going to make much difference there.
Different to them, yeah, exactly.
But with the milk bans, there was the agreement levels were a lot less. I suppose it was a lot more kind of 50-50, really. Nationally speaking, only 36% said they'd agree that they'd benefit water quality nationally. I think this just comes down to more, and with more than strongly disagreeing, up around the 40% were saying they didn't agree, and the rest neutral. But I think this was just that the awareness around the milk bans wasn't quite as strong, and maybe the understanding of how they work, or the understanding behind the science to it, mightn't have been as clear.
Did farmers kind of say to you, we don't understand what that means? Like, do you know what the bans will do to water quality? Is it just purely down to the science, lack of or not communications? It's a new concept. It's only been in, I suppose, in the last year bit. We spoke about it a bit, but did they say they just weren't sure? They didn't understand it?
Yeah, well, I didn't ask them directly after that question, that can you explain why you picked each option? But I think it came back to, from later on in other questions that asked them, I think it did come back to just not really 100% sure. Couldn't really see how that was going to benefit water quality as much, whereas when we moved to the chemical fertilizer reductions, again, a lot of them north of nearly 70% said they agreed that it would benefit water quality nationally, with the remainder being neutral or disagreeing to it. So, because them farmers then following on had said that, maybe they saw last year with the higher input costs and fertilizer prices probably meeting record highs, that they cut back and they saw they could spread less nitrogen and still grow the same amount of grass, and they thought, less nitrogen going out, probably less chance of nitrogen being available for leaching. So on the soil water and the chemical fertilizer reductions, the more or less there was more agreeing than disagreeing, we'll say, for improving water quality. With the milk bans, they were kind of 50-50 really, if that was going to benefit water quality or not.
It's quite positive though, isn't it? Like for farmers to come out and say, that you just said, some of your farmers come out and said, we can still grow the same amount of grass with less nitrogen. That's a big behavioural change, and it's very positive for farming, I think.
Yeah, of course, showing the less inputs, I suppose, we can put in and get more efficient with our nitrogen use. It's definitely positive, and hopefully we'll see them results now in the water quality trends.
A lot of the farmers, though, would have been under NAP, would be using the clover in the swards, so that would have been an additional benefit. Plus your liming campaign, soil fertility, looking at your soil sample. So a lot of the regulations would have been pushing towards better efficiency anyway.
Yeah, they would. And I suppose with the questions and I asked later on with the actions the farmers were going to take, they kind of came back to what you've said there, Deirdre. On terms of the chemical fertilizer reductions, they were highlighted they'll try and improve soil fertility. The liming programme should help with that, hopefully, and incorporating clover as one of their top 3 choices there as well.
Do you think if you'd asked the farmers first, if they'd been your to select what options they thought would have most effect on either production or water quality, do you think that they would have gone for the same 3 mitigation actions?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Deirdre, to be honest. I'm not sure what would they have or not, because I suppose as farms is so farm specific, certain measures depending on what you're doing on your farm. Like there was different measures there depending if you had commonage or not. There was no chemical nitrogen. You can't spread any chemical nitrogen on commonage anymore. So maybe for farms that had commonage, that might impact them, but majority didn't. So that's why that one didn't come up. And with the low emission slurry spreading, when we go back here and look at now that 64% of these farmers were in derogation already, the introduction of the low emission slurry spreading wouldn't have made much difference to those farmers because they're already doing it. So possibly the same measures may have come up, but
the slurry storage one I'm surprised wasn't the top.
That's the one I'd be interested in. But it's funny. Low emission spreading is an example you use, and that's been in for a while now. And I think farmers in the last 5 years have come to realization that's not just for regulation, that it's a really good piece of technology. And you'd actually see more trail and shoes and dribble bars in the road now than you would see splash plates, which is encouraging anyway.
Yeah, it was a comment that they would have passed at different stages. Actually, also caught during the interview or the phone survey. That I would have heard many of them saying, I don't know how many exactly, but they would have said, like changes like the low emission slurry spreading, the trail and shoes, they have a great job, and we can see the difference between spreading with the less machinery compared to the splash plate, the better responses, and the benefits in terms of being able to go in grazing sooner and other benefits like that. But
yeah, and it's great to get those double wins, that the farmer wins and the environment wins, and that's what it's all about, trying to create that communication where the farmer understands that it's a benefit all around.
The Agricultural Catchments Programme kicks off on Friday the 5th of May on the Teagasc Signpost series and runs until Friday the 12th. During the week, each day, you will have lots of opportunity to learn about the Agricultural Catchments Programme and the farmers in it, with content ranging from podcast, articles, videos, webinars and social media, with the highlight of the week being the open day in the Timalee catchment on Friday the 12th from 11 to 1:30. Don't miss it, with lots of interesting information. For social media, use #ACP Week 23. That's it for this episode of the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast. Thanks to Teagasc Walsh Programme Masters student Diarmuid Mulkerrins for joining us on the show.
Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Cathal Summers.
And I'm Deirdre Glenn.
Join us next time for the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast, signpost to farm sustainability.